All right, today, another one that folks have asked me to tie is a Hog Hunt, which is a fly that I came up with or whatnot about a year ago. The Hog Hunt's like an initial plan or initial goal with the Hog Hunt. Here's one that's done. It's got a deer hair, kind of wedgish but rounded head. It's got you can't see it, but there's a cone buried underneath there. It just gets down, but then when you stop stripping, it pauses and settles. You know, just kind of suspends right there. So it works really great if you're fishing a river that has a lot of brush, stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got the Kona XSS hook in a 1/0. These hooks are a little bit heavier, so since we're tying this one all with bucktail and just a tiny little bit of craft fur, it's not one that you gotta worry about having too thick of a hook on and it sinking too fast. I actually like having a heavier gauge hook on this one because I am planning on fishing it through a lot of wood, stuff like that, so I want to be able to have a very durable fly and durable hook. I want this to be able to last, you know, all day without bending, stuff like that. So anyways, to tie this, I'll be using bucktail, craft fur. I've got this grizzly saddle I really like. It's kind of got broader, shorter feathers in it, so I think it's just like a hen saddle. Flashaboo in the pearl, I believe, and this other Flashaboo in, it's like a UV holographic, and again UV polar chenille. So we'll go ahead and start this by grabbing some pretty long fibers off of this tail. Get a nice straight cut at the base. I slide my fingers up, maybe halfway, pull all these little tag ends out. We don't need those. So then you should have that. Tie it in on top of the hook. The other kind of goal with this is a lot of like the slider patterns and diver patterns that are out there in the world end up sinking anyways. So the goal with this hook and tying everything on top is keeping as much of that hook free to hook fish. So anyways, tie that down the body. Move your thread back up to where you tied that in at. Pull out, not a ton. Of the holographic UV Flashaboo. I've probably got 15 strands here. I'm gonna go through and vary them in length. I'm gonna wrap this right around my thread. I'm gonna put it right on top too to try to keep it so it's not going to get fouled up. It'll spread itself around on top of here just fine. Shouldn't have to worry about it too much. All right, next step is gonna be your hen saddle. I want a feather for each side, and I want it to be about the length of this tail that I've already got on here. So This is getting a little picked over, but it's a bad feather. All right, so I've got my two feathers. Like I said, I like the hen ones because they're a little brushier. About the length of the tail. Go ahead and pull that extra stuff away there. Tie one on each side of the tail. Again, you can tie them further up. Tying them in at the tail, though, usually keeps them from fouling around the hook, which is exactly what we want. We don't want this to be a fly that you have to check every single time to make sure it hasn't fouled a little bit. You're going to grab 5 inches or so of the UV polar chenille, and then you'll see that it leans one way. Tie that in, again, right up on top, keeping your hook gap clear of anything that won't push down out of the way. And then bring your thread back up here to the front of your hook, or front of your material. I'm leaving about enough room to get a whole nother cone on here, if you can see that. It's 8 degrees here today, and we got like 30-mile-an-hour winds, so it's not real exciting fishing wise. I think even if you were an ice fisherman, you'd be pretty miserable today. All right, tie that guy off. So now we've still got enough room here. You'll see I can push this guy back almost maybe a little bit more than a full cone's length. Now, I don't know how your bucktail is. This one's not the greatest. But if I go off of one side, I have long fibers, and if I go off the other side, then I have shorter fibers. So on this particular one, it doesn't matter if your fibers are shorter or longer. Just telling you where I'm getting it. Now this, you can leave those shorter guards in. One or two nice loose wraps, and then tighten her around. When she's good and tight, go ahead and push your cone back. Pull all your fibers back. You should have that. It's gonna be a brushy mess until you push that cone back, just so you know. Don't be expecting it to cooperate right off the bat. Grab maybe 10 strands of holographic pearl, or not holographic, but just pearl. Wrap it around, right on top, and then kind of use your fingernail and just disperse that flash boot material around the top half of this hook, and then whip finish. Now, same trick we did with the HD deceiver or the minnow, depending upon which video you watched. We're gonna push everything back, push the cone up with our thumb, and just get as much super glue up in underneath there as we can without making a big mess. And then slide it back. So she should look like that. So from here, we're gonna do another drop of super glue in front of the eye. Just barely kind of graze it there. Start our thread again. Let that sit for a minute. You're just gonna let it kind of dry. Grab about an inch by inch square again off of your craft fur patch. We're going to tie this in reverse. So she'll have that. Kind of just cover up the cone. Couple loose wraps, and then use your hand again here and just spread it around. Just kind of give it a couple little twists, and it should pretty much disperse itself pretty evenly around the hook. Separate it, pull it all back. So now you got about enough room to put a cone on, but you're not gonna use a cone. Instead, I'm gonna use natural deer hair and gray deer hair. I guess that's the plant. Here's the natural. All right. Give your bobbin a twist there for a little bit. You need this to be, your thread to be nice and round. It's gonna really grip onto this a lot better if it's rounded. And then I tie it in. You can see this hair has a slight curve to it. I tie it in, laying that curve down. And then spin it. Give her a good push. Make sure everything is on there really tight. And then, gray. Now there's kind of a couple different ways of doing the gray here. We're gonna cut most of it off, so you don't need the tips. So what I end up doing is I cut it, again, about maybe a pencil thickness where it goes through my fingers. And then I grab it like that. And then I just cut all these tips off. I don't need them. They're just gonna kind of distract me later while I'm trying to trim stuff up. And then put it on right in the middle. Spin it. This is kind of a point here where I just kind of move everything back and forth, give it a couple good tightens. You just want to make sure that everything is dispersed evenly so that when you go to trim one side of your fly, it doesn't look empty. There he is. So this is just kind of like a little Buford head. You don't have to trim this necessarily if you don't want to. But I find it's just got way too much float in it for me. So I whip finish it, get that knot good and tight. Now you're gonna come back through, you're gonna cut the bottom straight, and you're gonna cut the top up, And then on the sides, we'll kind of look at that when we get to that point. But so just take your razor blade, rest it right on the eye, give it a couple little pushes back. You'll see that's what my bottom looks like. The top. Top, bottom. So now what I want to do is kind of take these, I rest the blade right on here, and to start anyways, but just kind of trim the head, and this takes a little practice. If you screw up, the nice thing about this fly is you could take this razor blade and slide it right back to the cone, cut the whole head off, start all over again. If you're fishing this fly and the head goes to crap on you, the rest of the fly will be fine. You can do the same thing later on. So like this, as the summer goes on, you don't feel like tying the whole thing, or maybe you run out of a color of deer hair that you want. Always change it. All right, there it is. Kind of a blunt little face on there. So, because I'm using these for guiding and I don't want them to fall apart all the time, pull out your Loon UV. I use the thin so it kind of soaks itself down in, and just spend some time here and make sure you've got all of that stuff that you cut basically. You want to get a little bit of this kind of blended right into it. So just kind of keep digging it in there, keep squeezing, keep squeezing. Cross idea. Make sure you get all the way up to the threads. You want to, be able to connect this deer hair head right to the eye of the hook if you can, without getting it all over the eye. All right, now next step, just kind of go back through. If you roughed anything up too much, we want this to kind of lay back as a nice solid piece, meaning we don't want it to have whiskers. There you go. There's the HD Hog Hunt. Fun little fly to fish. I love them. quite the collection going here. It's a great little pattern to have in your box. It's fairly quick, fairly easy. It looks messy, doesn't need eyes. It's gonna dig. You can kind of give it the jigging strip if you want. It'll kind of move through the shallows. Good fly to have around. All right, have a great day.